Part 2. Rapture, the underwater city. It stands as a response to Atlas Shrugged, hence the main villain Frank Fontaine's alias of Atlas. Andy Ryan founded the city because he felt the plebeian masses were parasites to the minority of society that contributed the most to human advancement. So he gathered together the greatest of his generation and created a society at the bottom of the ocean, isolated from the rest of the world that Ryan felt was doomed to imminently destroy itself in nuclear warfare. This is to follow the ending of Atlas Shrugged, when a similar group of individuals went on strike against a society that they felt did not appreciate them and only sought to leech from their hard work. The metaphor is what happens when a person holding up the world, Atlas, decides to shrug. This gets really partisan really fast, as this is Ayn Rand's writing on a political topic. I don't want to quickly sink into the murky depths of objectivism and libertarianism, but honestly, I don't have to, because BIOSHOCK doesn't. It expresses a more surface-level understanding of the topics. Andy Ryan isn't just an objectivist, he's a libertarian as well. When Fontaine first starts being a problem, Ryan believes to a fault that the free market will correct the situation. The problem with Ryan's theory, and the idea of trusting the free market in general, is that correction is a lot uglier than anyone ever wants to deal with. Trust in the free market falls apart when the consequences can often be the total collapse of an economic system. For instance, the mortgage crisis in 2007 was created in part because it was believed that regulation of the derivatives market was unnecessary, and from a certain standpoint it is. If you burn yourself on a terrible options contract, you only have yourself to blame. There's a sort of evolution that should, in theory, create more robust traders who appropriately recognize the risks. Only what happened was that the free market theory didn't account for human nature, in this case greed, and that bred complacency that the market would go up forever. Letting the free market correct itself in that situation would have resulted in widespread bankruptcy, but in the long term would have created a more robust system where the traders smart enough to recognize value would be the new market leaders, and the traders who just expected the numbers to go up forever would be punished. Except, most people would lose their homes and savings and would have suffered in poverty for a decade. If you want to know my political bias, I don't believe that any form of government's robust enough to handle every situation appropriately. It's better to let the states decide. To hedge my ideological criticisms, anarchism just feels like we're going back to the caveman days. Communism incentivizes covering up when you accidentally release a pathogen or cause a famine, and fascism leads to nepotism and fragile despotism that can't take criticism. I think that a well-thought-out critique of Ayn Rand's philosophy might play well in a video game because you can show how a bad actor can fundamentally undermine the inherent trust required in such a society with the player's actions. The only problem is that this critique fails because Andrew Ryan is a caricature. It's like saying that all the communist villains that end up on this channel are genuine criticisms of communism. If you portray the other side not as human, but as mustache-twirling villains, then the criticism lacks intellectual substance. However, this is weirdly not entirely a criticism of Atlas Shrugged, because of this scene.
It's like a movie. Actually, my involvement is nothing.
In the end, what separates a man from a slave? Money? Power? No. A man chooses. A slave obeys. You think you have memories. A farm. A family. An airplane. A crash. And then this place. Was there really a family? Did that airplane crash? Or was it hijacked? Forced down. Forced down by something less than a man, something bred to sleepwalk through life until they're activated by a simple phrase spoken by their kindly master. Was a man sent to kill, or a slave? A man chooses. A slave obeys. Stop, would you kindly? Would you kindly? Powerful phrase. Familiar phrase.
Would you kindly? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly find? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch?
Sit. Would you kindly? Stand. Would you kindly? Run. Stop. Turn. A man chooses. A slave obeys. Kill. Obey!
Hurry now! Hardware to the key! They want to kindly put it in that goddamn machine! Nice work! It's time to end this masquerade. There ain't no Atlas kid. The name's Frank Fontaine.
So it turns out that Frank Fontaine has been pulling our strings this whole time and is the real villain, not Ryan. So where do I start? Do I complain about player choice or about what Fontaine is supposed to represent? One of the points of the game is supposed to be commentary on how players of linear games often lack choice. They said, as they continued thereafter to make linear shooters that lacked meaningful player choice, Fontaine created us and expedited our growth in order to take down Ryan. We were his illegitimate son, and we were coded to obey Fontaine. Fontaine disappeared after Ryan took over his company, emerging as Atlas and beginning the long con. He needed Ryan's DNA, or at least half of it, in order to control the genetic key to the city to prevent Ryan from destroying his own city. We hijacked the flight at our trigger word. Atlas controlled us the entire game over the radio with our trigger word, "Would you kindly?" However, here's the problem. Fontaine possesses not just a phrase to control us, but a backup code word and a kill word, meaning that the deception of Atlas was only necessary to trick the player, not the character. Further, Fontaine's plan actually made things harder for him. Ryan initially only wanted us dead because we were an outsider, as he was paranoid that a major world power would send an infiltrator into the city to undermine him. Why the lighthouse was still in one place then is a question for another time. The point is, the player would have had a much easier time getting to Ryan if we had never left the city in the first place. You might say that Atlas wanted us to get the plasmids and upgrades. I would respond that it was Fontaine who developed said plasmids. I would think he would have no issue getting us those upgrades. Indeed, there is no reason for us leaving the city, crashing the plane and journeying down to Rapture, other than to fool the player. And that's just stupid. However, what is worse is the premise that linear games don't present the player with choice. Take Doom. You don't have a lot of choice about whether you get to fight the demons or not. The choices you make instead are how you handle the situation. Do you rush for the exit, or do you go in as a professional demon exterminator? How do you use the power-ups you find? How liberal with power weapons are you? These are simple choices, but they are choices nonetheless. These are what separate video games and movies. Movies do not give the audience these choices. The protagonist will use the weapon on this enemy in this way at this time. I think it's silly to hold BioShock as some paragon of player choice just because it integrates a progression system into a first-person shooter. It's not the first game to do this, nor is its upgrade system particularly interesting. There's little difference between the plasmids of today and the alternate fire modes of weapons in yesteryear. There is functionally no difference between BioShock and any other linear shooter, other than the theme about the illusion of choice. There is another flashing neon sign we have to talk about, and that is the little sister choice. The reasons for choosing to fight the Big Daddies. When we first defeat a Big Daddy, we're presented with two choices for what to do with the sister. Fontaine wants us to harvest the parasitic slug, killing the sister but giving us Adam. Tenenbaum, another character who's been unsurprisingly irrelevant in this review, wants us to save the little sister, giving us less Adam but being overall the more moral choice. Every time you save 3 sisters, you get a gift of more Adam that completely undermines the choice. I don't really want to have to spend a whole lot of time explaining just how bad this system is. Because BioShock has earned its place in plenty of other essays, I feel gross and wrong calling this an essay, plenty of other writings on video games about moral choices, particularly in the section on what not to do. The idea is you make the immoral choice that is more rewarding in the short term, or the moral choice that is less rewarding. Developers don't want to make being immoral more rewarding, but the thing is, most people wouldn't be immoral if doing the right thing was more rewarding. Moreover, the choice is not really that great. 3 harvests nets you 480 Adam, 3 rescues nets you 440 Adam, so by the end you'll have more if you were harvesting, but then that gets into the upgrade system. Just doing rescues, I was able to buy pretty much every plasmid and tonic I needed or wanted to have an easy time of the game. But I hear you say that in that one part, I had to turn the difficulty down for a Big Daddy fight. Yeah, see, harvesting then wouldn't have actually helped because that section happened right after the first little sister, and the upgrades that were available at that point were not that impressive and I was able to afford the health upgrades, so harvesting the little sister wouldn't have made that section any easier. Meaning that the whole choice system was not really in play for the hardest moment in the game, and it only got easier thereafter. So fun fact, I did some research on the wiki because I didn't write down in my notes how much Adam harvesting a little sister gives you, and I saw this note. So let's talk about the Proving Grounds. After Fontaine's reveal, we get rescued by Tenenbaum. She wants us to beat Fontaine, but during our fight, Fontaine goes through a door, and this game about how little agency players have in linear first-person shooters proceeds to force us into a Big Daddy suit to escort a little sister through a linear section. And apparently, I didn't know this, if the little sister dies, it's no big deal, just buy another. You couldn't even bear to penalize the player for letting their little sister die? I get it now. I've finally gone crazy. I thought this game was a criticism of how little choice players have in linear games, but now I realize it's a statement that players have too much choice in linear games. Why else would the player be ramrodded into the Big Daddy suit and forced to fight Fontaine? Wouldn't it have been more conducive for the story to let the player free at this point, to have to choose between leaving Rapture to its fate under Fontaine or getting revenge? All we've done is trade one master for another, and there it is. Let's dispel the illusion. BioShock has no player agency. It's no better than the modern military shooters that it is often held above. Maybe that's the point. But it would be like me criticizing 50-part Minecraft Let's Play series and then tomorrow announcing my new survival playthrough. Frank Fontaine represents how cronyism inevitably corrupts the capitalistic system by any means necessary. Fontaine uses the plight of the poor. Fontaine uses the plight of the poor as a tool against Ryan until it was no longer useful, then discarded them. He, in theory, is a wonderful foil to Andrew Ryan. In a way, his conflict with Ryan was not that he was a parasite, but that it was Ryan's ideal man, and Ryan was envious. In practice, he is absent the first half of the game. Of course, this is because he is Atlas, and giving him audio logs early might tip the hand. And to be fair, my first time playing this long ago, I didn't figure it out, because I didn't care. Although this was mostly because of the confusion for aforementioned reasons, just seemed like a convoluted plan that only makes sense if Fontaine hates me personally, as in me, the player. And once Fontaine is in the spotlight, he's mocking the player, insulting us, insulting everyone else. Andrew Ryan was a measured individual. In contrast, Fontaine is a rude cutthroat. Part of the problem is I don't understand what it is that Fontaine actually wants. Did he run this scam as a way to make money? Then why didn't he cut Rapture loose as soon as things went to shit? Did he do it to spite Ryan? Well, he's dead now, so why hold animosity against the player? Did he do it to take over Rapture? Well, now he's King of the Ashes. Did he do it for the Atom? His enemy should have been Tenenbaum then. What Fontaine was supposed to be was more interesting when he was the only character with no presence. No audio logs for him to tell us what he wants, only references by other people speculating on what they think he wants. He's the principal reason that Rapture failed. And there's a lot of intrigue to be mined from trying to discover why, only for the answer to be because he's an asshole who wants more power. Seriously, you have a fucking super soldier who is under your mind control plasmid, and you decide that you're just gonna kill him because his usefulness is up? Like, that shit's useful forever. The real question is BioShock an immersive sim? I've put a large amount of stock into the importance of story choice, which I'm sure some have cringed at. I just think it's a massive failure to criticize a lack of choice and agency and then follow it up with a lack of choice. So I looked at some lists of what the defining elements of immersive sims are. This is Giant Bomb's list. It's by far the most comprehensive I was able to find. Let's see how BioShock, an apparently clear example of the genre, stacks up against what is our most recent first-person shooter. Ah yes, Modern Warfare. Immersion in an elaborate and believable game world. Immersion. It sounds subjective. I could see someone getting more immersed in Modern Warfare's more realistic story than BioShock's attempt at commentary. Believable? Again, Modern Warfare has a clear advantage with its realistic story, so I'm going to have to give it to Modern Warfare. Physics and AI are used to create believable behavior in objects and characters which the player can freely interact with, resulting in emergent gameplay. The AI of Modern Warfare will get wounded when shot. If they take enough damage, they enter a down state and attempt to continue fighting with their pistol. In contrast, the AI of BioShock shrug off and ignore bullets like it's a video game. Hard failure on BioShock's part. First-person perspective. Well, both pass by default. Game design that allows for multiple paths and/or multiple solutions in every situation. In the level all gillied up, the player can avoid a helicopter, or they can shoot it down with a Stinger missile. Most of the choices in BioShock boil down to just what weapon you want to use to kill enemies, like it's a 90s shooter. Far too arcadey to be an immersive sim. I'm going to have to give it to Modern Warfare. A systemic game world that keeps tracks of the player's actions, which can affect the whole game. I like the quotes on this. It's like they know that most of these bullshit immersive sim games just have different cutscenes at the end for its basic choices. Like, it knows that it's not going to matter for the whole game. Open-ended, non-linear game design with an emphasis on choice and consequence. Hard failure for BioShock. Modern Warfare, on the other hand, has a level where the character can take multiple paths to completion. Full control over the player characters in every situation. As you can see from this cutscene, the player has no choice in killing Ryan. It's a rather big part of the story. In fact, it's a big theme of the game. In contrast this with Modern Warfare providing full choice in the killing of its villains. A world with consistent rules that the player can interact with. BioShock has enemies with scaling health, while Modern Warfare maintains consistency and realism between enemies. Hard failure for BioShock. Narrative that is not always forced on the player, but instead can be told through exploration and gameplay at the player's will. Indeed, the game's many secrets can be discovered through emergent exploration, while BioShock often forces the player into cutscenes to exposit its themes. Hard failure for BioShock. No fail states beyond player death. Both pass. As you can see, Modern Warfare is a shining lighthouse of an immersive sim, while BioShock is a false pretender. I'm glad I could clear up just what an immersive sim truly is with this definitive list. So yeah, it's bullshit. Proponents of the genre will claim that not all elements have to be there to count. These are weasel words, in which case I stand firmly by my thesis that Modern Warfare is indeed an immersive simulator. So why do people think that BioShock is an immersive sim? Because we have magic hands. I mean, arguably they are just guns with a different model. What's the difference between the flame plasmid in this game and the flamethrower in any other first-person shooter ever, and also this game? It's just a model, guys. Because there are non-linear levels? Yeah, no. There is the illusion of non-linearity. Because there is a progression system. So Morrowind counts then, right? It's missing from these definitive lists, but Oblivion's there, so I'm going to assume that no. It's time to face the facts. By the definition I have been given, BioShock has failed to meet the mark of an immersive sim, let alone a standout example of the genre. But it all comes back to this clip. I was told that if the character was standing in water and I shocked it, they would die.
If you spot a splicer in the water, hit him with the electrobolt.
They didn't even acknowledge my existence. But it gets worse, far worse than I showed before. This lady is standing next to a cabinet with a piece of paper on it. In giant letters says the number 0451. A clever and very subtle reference. The paper is not hidden in the casket. The number is not reasonably written, which breaks my immersion, and there is no clue what the number corresponds to other than to turn around and immediately find a locked door requiring a code. It's very arcadey. But do you want to know what's in the closet? I'm going to open the door, and I'll let you read it. Look at that. It's the truth.